It's still hard to believe we've been thrust into this life and death moment, and easy to think it's only older people who are really at risk. For the most part, that is true, but there are exceptions. Matt Greenshields from Okotoks, Alberta, is one of them. He's 19 years old, and he's just come through the fight of his life. He is one of the youngest people in Canada to survive COVID-19, and he wants other young people to pay attention. Matt, hi there. I'm so glad you're feeling well enough to talk to us. You're a healthy 19-year-old. You started out that way, at least. Give us a bit of a timeline. You started feeling sick in mid-March. How quickly did it deteriorate?
Yeah, so I started feeling very mildly sick on the 12th, and then I came home to Okotoks. At the time, I was living on campus at University of Calgary. And then over the course of being at home, I felt like all my symptoms had gone away about 8 days later. And then on March 24th, so 12 days later, they all came back at once. And then I was admitted into the hospital on the 25th, told I had COVID on the 26th, and then told I had mono on the 27th.
And it was the combination, the doctors say, that made you so sick, and you ended up in intensive care. Describe how you felt at that point.
Well, physically, I was not doing so well. I was in pretty rough shape because I was so sick. But mentally, knowing that I was going into the intensive care was really hard to hear. I remember the doctors coming in and they're telling me, we're going to put you in intensive care for a potential tracheotomy. And I remember just not saying anything. I was just in total shock because, you hear stories about the ICU and what happens, and you never expect yourself to be in there. So it was terrifying. And
I guess at that point, you were also isolated from your family, right? They had to stay away from you. What was that like for you and for your mom especially?
Yeah, I was with my mom at the time in the hospital when they told me that the COVID swab came back positive, and I was actually asleep. And so my mom had to wake me up and break the news that she had to leave in 5 minutes. And so that was definitely the hardest point mentally for me, just knowing that I couldn't see anyone that I knew in probably the scariest time of my whole life. And and the nurses too. I give my heart out to the nurse who had to give that news. It's just as hard for her to see that happen as it is for us to take it. And yeah, it was really tough.
So for people who are your age, give us a clear sense of how you were feeling, what this did to you, how you felt that night when you were in ICU.
When I was in ICU, I had never felt so scared and so physically ill in my whole life. And I had never expected at all. Like, my tonsils and everything was swollen to the point where I couldn't communicate, I couldn't breathe properly, and I couldn't swallow. And so those three things alone are enough to scare. It was terrifying for me. And being so young, I never expected to be in that sort of a spot where I would need to be in intensive care. And so I guess it's a good takeaway to know that this really could happen to anyone.
Do you have any idea where you caught COVID-19?
That's a question that I would like to know as well. I don't have any ideas, but being at university and living on campus, it's such a diverse and international place that I must have just touched the wrong doorknob or something, just a freak thing that I'd never expected.
You decided to go public with your story, I know. What is it you want young people to know about this virus?
Yeah, at first I didn't want to go public just given how graphic my own case was. But then I was aware of some people who were having small house parties and gathering still around people that I know. And it's tough for me to see that knowing what I went through, and I don't want anyone else to have to go through that. So I decided to come out publicly with what happened to me to hopefully raise awareness more of my peers and say, I don't know how I got it, and it could really happen to anyone.
Did you think at one point you might not make it, Matt?
Yeah, when I was being wheeled down to the ICU, I was definitely starting to finally question myself, because up to that point I was thinking, I'm just going to get over it. It's just a sickness. I'm young, I'm healthy. But being wheeled down to the ICU and being in those remote hallways where there's nobody, I was with my thoughts and I was thinking, this is this is scary now. And then while I was in ICU and all of my symptoms just exploded and peaked, and how much care I was being given, I was finally thinking I don't know how this is going to turn out. I don't know how this is going to end up. So that was definitely a very scary moment for me to think that.
Matt, you're looking great now. You're talking to us. What's your prognosis? How are you doing?
I'm doing much better now. I've had a lot of time to recover at home now. I've just been basically sleeping away the days, trying to get better as much as I can. But yeah, definitely better than it was.